cash. That we're moving towards a cashless society. So the loan-back method of money laundering involves the cleaning of money obtained from criminal activities such as insider trading, extortion, illegal gambling, drug trafficking, to appear to have been derived from legal activities in order for financial institutions to deal with it without any suspicion. See, that's the key to it. You don't know when that person walked in the door where those funds came from. Because they could have a relative that is dealing in some illegal activity, but they have a legitimate job. So money can be laundered using various methods, which vary in terms of sophistication and complexity. Loans and mortgages are usually taken as a cover to launder money proceedings, and lump sum cash payments, repayments, like you said, are used to repay the loans or mortgages. And you'd read in a lot of international typologies on money laundering and real estate, especially in jurisdictions like the Bahamas and Seychelles and Malta and those. They talk about foreigners who come in and they would apply for a mortgage. They would pay their down payment, which is from illegal activities, and they would actually pay off the mortgage, probably for 3 to 4 to 5 years, all using illegal funds, and then just pay off the balance. And so that's why the Compliance Commission, in its latest report on the real estate sector, is really, really hammering in that the gatekeepers must ensure that they know where the funds are coming in when these foreigners apply, or when these foreigners come in to purchase property, then they apply to the National Economic Council, and then they apply to a bank to get a mortgage to finance these large projects that they're doing. And I want you to notice in some of those large projects, you'll find out that these people really don't have any money. A lot of them, their funds came from where? They would have actually been in their home country and they would have swindled other people out of their money. And then they take that money and they come to the Bahamas and they invest it.
Okay.
You didn't know that, eh?
I hadn't really researched that part so far, but I did know that some of them, they really did not have any funds.
Yes. And that's why you see projects will start and projects will stop. So even as recently as this year, we had a foreigner who was dealing with a very large project in the millions, but it wasn't his money. It was not his money. He had defrauded a lot of people in his country. And so the project was on hold. And this person would have gone through the vetting process here. And that's why I'm saying, yes, it may look legitimate on paper, but you have to ask yourself certain questions. Certain things don't add up, and the only way you'll be able to detect it is doing more reading as to how criminals think. So placement. This is the first stage of money laundering, like you all know. And this is where the source of cash is easily misrepresented or disguised. It involves the movement of cash from the source, followed by placing it into circulation locally or abroad through casinos, financial institutions, shops, bureaus, and other businesses. So again, when you you saw in the papers today, someone was arrested for trying to leave the country with $11,000 in cash without declaring it. Who does that?
Tommy?
I mean, why would you do that? Isn't it easier to just declare it?
Thank you. If it's legitimate, declare it. End the
Ex-
story.
Declare it.
Hmm.
So, and then sometimes you see people walk in the shops. Rolex can't last in the shop. When was it? During COVID, after the shops open up downtown in John Bull, there were no more Rolexes, none. They said when the tourists came in, that's the only thing they bought were Rolex watches. What a wonderful way to launder money. So the process includes purchase of assets, such as property, jewelry, paintings, the blending of funds, security brokers, currency exchanges, bank complicity, and currency smuggling. The second stage, like you know, is layering, and money launderers make it more difficult to uncover or detect the laundering activity. Be mindful now, money laundering has been going on for a very long time, and it hasn't stopped. And money laundering isn't just dealing with drugs, supplying addicts with what they need. Money laundering includes much more now. People have all kinds of businesses where they launder money. So this is meant to make it difficult for enforcement agencies to uncover or trail the illegal proceeds. The methods of layering include cash being converted to monetary instruments, or material assets that are being bought with the laundered cash is then sold. Integration, which is the third stage, involves the movement of previously laundered money into the economy through the banking system. And this makes the illegitimate money to appear in the normal business earnings. The methods involved in this stage include property dealing, front companies, and false loans. And that happens a lot in other places around the world, false loans and front companies. So you will have a businessman, he has invoices where he is paying for goods, and the invoices are all fictitious. You have foreign bank complicity, and then you have false import and export invoices. And for the false import and export invoices, you have to be able to detect when you look at an invoice, whether that invoice is legitimate or not. And whether the items are actually sold by that company, and also whether or not the prices that are stated in that invoice relate to that item. And sometimes you'll see that the company name is 2 or 3 different company names pasted together. And then you find out that the address of the company is fictitious. Never seen that, right? No one has seen that? You haven't? It happens.
I haven't. Because I would be able to, I've worked in the accounts department for a long time. So something like that to me is very easily detected if you look at it closely. You can
Yes.
see that there's something wrong with that document.
Mhm. And that's the key to it. You know, sometimes people like to rush you. There's always a reason for rushing,
Yes, yes.
because they don't want you to be able to detect what it is that they're doing, what it is that they don't want you to see. And that's why you should always take your time.
Mhm.
So although these methods Okay, other methods of money laundering include investing in movable commodities like gold and gems, investing in selling valuable assets such as real estate discreetly, because they'll go from friend to friend. They would come here, pay the deposit, get the approval, pay the loan off for 1 year, year and a half, 2 years, pay the balance off, and then they sell it to another friend. Counterfeiting, gambling, and creating shell companies. So although these methods are still currently being used, any money laundering approach always include modern methods like the internet, which helps to create a new spin on the old crime. With internet, money launderers are able to avoid detection. And this is why you would have seen last week, the Securities Commission executive director is now looking at seeing how she can improve the DARE legislation for the fintech industry, because they realize that using technology, money moves very quickly than it does in the bank. And there's so much room for money laundering. Any one of you work in a fintech company?
No.
No? Well, if you think onboarding of customers in the traditional bank sometimes get kind of, I guess, tricky, where people are telling you, you must onboard, in the fintech world, it's worse than that. Because they take on all clients.
Well, you can't just onboard anyone. If you have a question, then it goes to the compliance department. If there's anything out of the ordinary that you really not comfortable with or unexplainable, that goes to compliance. End of story. Let them deal with it.
And the compliance officers will tell you in that world that there is high pressure.
Yes.
Yeah, the high pressure. Very, very high pressure. Because some of the clients that they see should not be onboarded. But they have to make it work.
Well, it can't, I mean, if there's something that's not clear, then they can't be taken on board. The answer has to be no.
Well, I don't hear many saying no.
Because that would leave your institution open to fines and that no.
Depends.
The answer would have to be no.
Right. But see, it depends at, be mindful now. They're here in this arena. How many of us know the fintech world?
I don't. I'm not familiar.
Okay. So all of us know traditional banking, correct?
I would know, yes.
Traditional banking. So here we have people coming in using fintech, which is being adapted to suit their purposes, much faster than traditional banking. And they're hiring traditional bankers and converting them to fintech people. You see, when we should have done was to open the door for traditional bankers and new people coming out of school, out of the university, and teach them fintech. Because they're two different worlds. Two different worlds speaking two different languages, but they're doing the same thing, moving money.
Right. Okay. Trying to conceal money.
Yes. Some is legitimate, some is illegitimate, and you have to be able to know the difference. To know the difference, you have to know the language. Okay. So if you take a traditional banker like me, who's been doing banking for 40 something years, and you start talking all these funny words, you're lost. But they're still actually doing banking. But it's done in a different way. There's no clients walking in. It's just documents being scanned to you, probably eye recognition or voice recognition, and you move on.
In that way, it does give a lot of room for fraud.
Yes. Yes.
So what is going to, so is there new legislation now coming in that will help us to detect and deal with it?
Well, she made the announcement last week that that's what they're looking into, because there are gaps in the legislation. And I'm saying, in my opinion, you could write as many legislation as you want. The people that they are hiring are us.
Yes.
You haven't schooled us in fintech.
Okay.
So you're going to have another gap, because the people who you're reporting to, the people who paying you, they know fintech. And they know how to get around these things. You're just following instructions. And the more that they are encouraging Bahamians to use fintech, you're going to see even more holes. Because the worst thing can happen now is for those who are involved in illegal activities, have younger family members who are techie smart, then start to move their money through fintech. And they're encouraging Bahamians to do it, to get up to speed with the international world and start trading and buying this and buying that. So it's not just about going into one of these fintech company and buying these different games, and is more than that. You go on there, you can buy assets, you can sell assets.
But the true origination and, like you say, placement, okay, it does open up quite a lot.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And they've been pushing it since we opened up from COVID. And that's why you see a lot of companies are coming here. And each one doing different parts of the fintech world, because they like the legislation. But I'm saying our people is not ready for it, because we haven't been trained.
Right, right.
And my fear is, in another year to 2 years, the word around may be worse than what we have now for money laundering. If we don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think that's why she said that they're going to be looking at legislation. So it says that although these methods are still currently being used, any money laundering approach always include modern methods like the internet, like I said earlier. So with the rise of online banking institutions, online payment services from unknown sources, peer-to-peer transfer using mobile phones, and virtual currencies like Bitcoin, detecting money laundering or illegal cash transfer has become more challenging. And that's the truth. Most often, the money launderer establishes an apparent legal origin of money through fabrication of transactions, like agreements, bookkeeping, invoices, deeds, reports, and spoken and written statements. Because remember, now everything now is done electronically. The common method used to justify money laundering is fabricating a loan, also referred to as back-to-back or loan back. And the most popular loan back form of money laundering is when criminals borrow their own criminal money. And this is usually done through the creation of a loan agreement between the criminal and a third party. So this is what they do. I'm in a criminal enterprise. I incorporate a company. So I incorporate company A. I incorporate that in the Bahamas. I incorporate a company in Seychelles. I incorporate one in Malta. I incorporate one in Cayman. I incorporate one in Singapore. Each one of these is doing a different business, but is a related business. And then what I do is I create agreements between the companies where they call what they call intercompany loans. And they move the money around. And as they move the money around, then they pay for different things in different jurisdictions. So most used third parties are offshore corporations who are controlled by the criminals. That's how that works. So for you all now, in terms of mortgages, right now, you're doing it the traditional way. But in another 2 to 3 years, you'll begin to see if these fintech companies stay, that they're going to be looking for underwriters for loans in the fintech world that you're going to have to get ready for. And you're going to have to be cognizant of how money laundering will take place. So when you talk about money laundering, you have to think about sanctions. So what's the latest sanction that's out there that you have to be mindful of? And in the commercial bank, you wouldn't see it. But if you're in the wealth side of it, what's the latest sanction that's out there? Anybody knows? Cleopatra?
What do you mean, to be blacklisted?
No. The latest sanction. This is where countries say you cannot do business with these people or this country. What's the latest one? I know you heard about it. Come on now. There's a big war going on.
Yes, oh goodness, can't remember the word now.
You remember them?
Yes, okay, because they have is it against Russia where
Yes.
you can't deal in anything to do with them. So it's like a, what is it, a ban?
Yeah, but it's not anything to do with them. It's the United States, Europe, Canada, and other countries
Right.
have targeted certain entities and individuals who are connected to Putin.
Right.
So those persons on that list and those entities on that list, you cannot do business with them.
Right.
Right. Now, the United Nations itself has sanctions on countries where you cannot do business with certain countries, not just individuals. And these are persons within those jurisdictions who, more or less, for a better word, are the rebels.
Right.
So if you move from the commercial and move into the private wealth sector, you will have to know all of the countries that have sanctions. Because that's important.
Yes.
Because there are special permissions have to receive if you want to do business in a sanctioned jurisdiction or with a sanctioned entity. So in addition to that, you have to be mindful of PEPs. So who are the PEPs in the Bahamas?
Anyone who's
Politically involved
exposed,
persons, yeah.
of
Politically
immediate
appointed.
family.
Yeah.
Mhm. Who else?
Anyone in the judicial, military, the
All of the
the major
commissioners.
corporations, yeah, the executive, legislative branch of any government or any government corporation.
Right? So you in commercial banking supposed to know, not head, but have in front of you as an underwriter, you should know who's on every board from a government
Mhm.
entity.
Mhm.
You should know who the local administrators are. You should know who's on the judiciary. And then you would liaise with your compliance department because you need to know everybody else who's connected to them.
Mhm.
So this is another reason why we are normally referred to as a money laundering jurisdiction. Because a lot of financial institutions do not link the PEPs to their families. And that's why, go ahead.
So aren't we supposed to?
Yes. You're supposed to.
Oh,
But when you read the matters that come before the court, what do you see? Don't you see people in those positions use their family members, use their
right. Mhm.
associate?
Right. More or less, they probably get away with it because if someone is not familiar with them, you know what I mean? To say, okay, my name is Lightborn, their name is Burrows. So they don't make that connection unless you are told or you have seen them together or some way. You know what I mean? Which can only come through research,
Yes.
which you're supposed to do that on every client. You do
Yeah.
the initial research that goes into the file that you're compiling on each client. And if there's any question that's not straightforward, then like it refers to compliance and the legal department.
Mhm. And so you see it happening over and over again in the Bahamas, where connected persons will use to launder money.
Mhm.
So even in the property and casualty area now, the ICB has implemented the PEP, but you have to do research on the PEP even for house and car insurance now.
Yes.
General expenses. So
Yes.
now you even have to fill that out. So the husband and the wife and these people just get so irritated and why I gotta fill all this out? Why I gotta present all of this? And yeah.
But you have to. But you have to, because if, like I said at the beginning, if you look at the flow of money, then you know that something is going on illegally. These people don't have small money, they have big money. A lady was in Brass and Leather. She was buying a bag for her daughter. Her daughter looks about 7. And she told her daughter, pick any bag you want. Mommy will pay for it. Any bag. Who's going to buy a $200 bag for a 7-year-old child? Who in their right mind? It has to be happening. It just has to be. So you have PEPs, you have sanctions, and you have to know who these people are. And are they of good reputation and character?
Sorry, not to cut you off. Okay, like with the PEPs, you said
it's for the family members too. It's not just immediate, it's like family on the whole, like whatever family you are to them.
And close associates, friends.
Mother,
Okay.
father, brother, sister,
Because
Mhm.
child.
Grandmother, all them.
cousin too.
Well,
Yep.
they don't have grandmother on it, but
They don't. But sometimes, even though it doesn't have grandmother on it, sometimes you gotta watch where the money is transferred to.
okay, yes.
True.
Mhm.
So, okay, so in the bank, like, I think I see, like, on the form, like, when you're filling out your KYC or whatever,
Mhm.
they will ask you that question though, like, if you
Yep.
are PEP or if you are a family
Yes.
member.
Yes, they
Okay,
do.
so
Mhm.
if I was to lie and say, well, no to that question, and they found out that I what is the consequences of that?
They have
They
a
can
right to
close
refuse
your
the
account.
business.
They close your,
Okay,
They can close your account.
okay,
Mhm.
Mhm. If they suspect that you are money laundering.
okay.
They are
Yeah.
also duty bound to report it. That means whatever funds you may have in the bank may possibly be held
Mm-hmm.
during the investigation. And if
Yes,
there's any cause for,
that could take a while.
yes,
Yeah, because I was just wondering, like, if it's just, okay, you just close the person's account, it's that's it, like, it's just a slap on the hand, because if you close
No.
my account, I go into somewhere else to find out if I could do it somewhere else.
No, it's investigated. It's investigated. Because it's a serious job, because the MLRO can go to jail
Mhm.
or be faced with fines. And then the institution can be faced with fines.
Mhm.
So it's not a play position.
Mhm. Up to $500,000
That's right.
plus time in jail.
On that black spot. So let me give you all a money laundering and mortgage, how to keep yourself safe. This Mr. Sujit Singh and Rashawar Singh, a father and son from Dublin, California, recruited straw buyers to purchase properties in and around Dublin, California. The Singhs purchased at least 14 properties and were able to collect origination fees and commissions on approximately $9.3 million worth of real estate. The Singhs, as part of the scheme, created fraudulent loan applications and support documents in order to induce lenders to fund the mortgages. The Singhs also set up various limited liability companies to receive some of the commissions and fees, trying to avoid further scrutiny of the transactions. As you would expect, the fraud was eventually discovered, and the Singhs was sentenced to 11 plus months in prison in 2018. This is just one example of how mortgage brokers and other real estate professionals fall into money laundering traps. If you don't take steps to protect yourself and your colleagues, a similar incident could occur in your organization. Real estate has always been appealing to money launderers. Real estate is often the preferred destination for financial criminals' ill-gotten gains. For the same reason, real estate is attractive to any investor. Real estate prices are generally stable and will appreciate over time. Real estate is also functional. A money launderer could use the property as a second home or rent it out, earning income from the investment. High dollar transactions allow money launderers to legitimize millions of dollars in illicit transactions in a single step. And they do not mind paying the high commissions and origination fees to do so. So as late as 2012, some mortgage lenders and originators were not subjected to the provisions of the US government's Bank Secrecy Act, but the Financial Crime Enforcement Network changed the rules. So now even non-bank residential mortgage lenders and originators are required to, among other things, identify specific information about their customers, maintain appropriate records, and maintain an adequate AML program. Yet, despite these rules, how much has really changed? Money launderers have clearly not backed off in their real estate purchases. In 2015, the Towers of Secrecy investigations in the New York Times exposed the scale of foreign dark money clouding Manhattan's glittery skyline. More than half of the $8 billion spent annually on New York real estate, worth more than $5 million, involved shell companies. Money launderers utilize shell companies because they serve multiple purposes, and the United States is leading the charge. The United States has 10 times more shell companies than the next 41 jurisdictions combined, according to the World Bank. So one of the biggest red flags for mortgage brokers is the utilization of shell companies or LLCs. So in the Bahamas, you know, that's the IBCs for the purchase of or sale. Shell companies, despite their legitimate uses, allows buyers and sellers to hide their true identities by masking ownership in deep layers or by placing ownership in countries and states which lack transparency. So you see why we were pressured to enforce the register of beneficial ownership. Because internationally, they wanted to know who owns all of these IBCs. So when setting up a limited liability company in states like Delaware, Nevada, and Wyoming, the owner doesn't even have to list their name. So normally the US compares Delaware, Nevada, and Wyoming to the Bahamas and Seychelles and Malta, because their LLCs, which is a simple form of incorporating a company, is similar to the process we use for the IBC. So they have to name a director and an agent, but that person can be anybody. And there are companies that exist simply to serve as directors of LLCs, where the beneficial owner doesn't want to be named. So in the Bahamas, at an IBC, you have a director, and then you have a registered office and you have a registered agent, but they have to have a license to do that business. So yes, the beneficial owner doesn't have to be named, because what the owner can do is they can enter into an agreement where the financial corporate service provider signs on and uses one of its company. So on the annual statement, it states the name of a company whom the actual beneficial owner has contracted with to represent him on the annual statement without putting his name. So as you would expect, the anonymity provided by shell companies is very attractive to criminals who are seeking to legitimize ill-gotten gains. So in the Bahamas, we don't have shell companies. That's why we have registered office and registered agent, which means that whatever company there is a human behind it. And there's a legitimate office that runs that company. So there are efforts underway to mandate greater accountability via transparency through the open sharing of beneficial ownerships of LLC. And that's why you see the government has that system called Robo, where you actually input who is the beneficial owner of your companies. Any questions or comments? No?
None for me.
Okay, so the methods associated with laundering illicit proceeds in the real estate sector, the common methods is, again, the purchase of real estate using large cash amounts, using third parties or gatekeepers. Again, that's attorneys and conveyancers or fronts to purchase and lease immovable property. The buying of building material, which can be purchased in cash or through successive deposits in accounts of the construction material stores. Acquiring of mortgage bonds and settlement of the bonds using large cash amounts. Purposely defaulting payment of mortgage installments and later settling them off using lump sum payment amounts. Foreign PEPs and nationals investing in real estate. Foreign nationals using locals to acquire real estate. The use of corporate structures through buying or owning companies or corporations which own real estate. And of course, using third parties, such as spouses and family members or companies or trusts to register the real estate so that you could avoid paying taxes. And then the use of unregistered real estate agents who are not accountable to the regulators. So what are some of the vulnerabilities of money lending to money laundering and terrorist financing risk? The risk of money laundering and lending increases through the use of accelerated repayment schemes and by way of lump sum repayments or early termination of the loan. The level money laundering risk in lending through residential and commercial property mortgages may depend upon the nature of the borrower and the nature and size of the mortgage loan. The ways that lending can be abused for the purposes of money laundering and terrorist financing is as follows. The lender may obtain a mortgage loan from a financial institution and use legitimate property as security for loan, but may repay the principal and interest with criminally derived funds. The loans or a series of loans may be used in a complex network of transactions designed to hide the origin and ownership of criminally derived property, as in the layering case. And third, a launderer may deposit criminally derived funds into a bank or acquire another form of property with such funds and use the property as security for a mortgage loan. No questions? Any comments? No?
No.
All right, so y'all get another early night. So any cases that you haven't read, please read so that when I tell you what the cases are next week, Saturday, you don't feel the pressure. So at least you would have read the ones that you didn't have a chance to read. Like the ones that you didn't present on, you probably didn't have the time to read it. Can take the opportunity now to catch up on your reading. So I'm going to send you the environmental act for you to read for Saturday, not read, but glance over it. There are some key sections we're going to go over on Saturday, and then we're going to talk about the duties and liabilities of realtors and contractors. So I'm also going to be sending you the contractors legislation.
Okay.
Psalm 98.
No, I've been reading what you have sent. Some of them on the laptop are long.
So what I'll do
But
is
yeah,
look at the legislation to look at for Saturday.
okay, all right.
Right?
That's good. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So have a
Thank
good evening.
you.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Saturday, please.
Saturday.
9:30.
Yeah.
Okay.
Saturday, 9:30. Okay.
Yes.
All
Okay.
right.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.